Hi, everyone. My name is Dustin Miles. I'm with Momentum Multifamily, and I'm super excited to have Drew on the show today. We've kind of known each other from afar, so cool to to interact and all that today. And anyways, Drew, I'll hand it over to you, and if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure, yeah. My name is Drew Pitchford. I've been in multifamily for 3 years now. I've been co-GP on a few deals. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and yeah, just looking to grow this business. And I really think that this year is a good time to strike, so to speak. So excited to hopefully get some more deals going this year and continue to grow the business.
Awesome. Well, sounds good. And where do you currently invest now? And just kind of what your general buy box looks like.
Sure, yeah. So I mentioned I'm from Nashville, and
Hmm.
I want to invest in Nashville. I haven't bought anything here yet, but I am constantly looking at deals here. Also, I'm looking in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is about 2 hours southeast, as well as certain submarkets around the Atlanta MSA. And so that's my general. I would say my general buy like geography. I'm actually a co-GP on a deal in Florida, which I would love to buy more down there as well, but Florida's been tough for the past 18 months or so. So until the insurance stuff gets straightened out down there, that's kind of on the back burner. Um, as far as buy box, really looking at 1990 plus properties, A and B class. On the B class side, value add, but kind of light value add, right? I'm not looking to knock out walls and add duct work and HVACs and all that. Like we really want to do interior renovations, maybe some exterior kind of, paint, whatever, simple stuff like that to bring a property up to modern standards, and then be able to raise rents and add value that way. On the A class side, when I'm looking at A class, it's really more about adding amenities. So obviously, if it's newer build, it's generally modern already, exterior and
Hmm.
interior, and so then it's about figuring out like what amenities would the tenants appreciate, and that we could maybe add to the property, and then add obviously like amenity fees and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different business plan, but a little bit simpler. And I would say that my approach on that is really trying to de-risk our LP's investment. So, we don't want to, and I think everybody's kind of aware of this right now. Like you want to be careful about the risk you're taking. And so, again, knocking out walls, very risky. Adding a dog washing station, not as risky. So, it's
Right.
kind of approaching things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's kind of we're probably more on your kind of side of the fence. We're not knocking out walls type of guys. So,
Right.
well, cool. Well, what's your role on the GP side, and then what do you like to do, and maybe I don't know if you started out wearing multiple hats and now you've kind of gone a little more specialized, or curious to hear what that looks like.
Yeah, so I went to college with got a software engineering degree. So I'm an engineer by trade essentially, and so that you could probably guess that translates to being more on the acquisition side of things. I
Mhm.
definitely like, the funny thing is, it's not just being in a spreadsheet though. I mean, like I like the underwriting and all of that, but I think underwriting is a larger definition, I think, than what a lot of people assume, which is just plugging in numbers and all these formulas. I really do like the broker relationships, touring the properties, seeing like in real life, seeing like what value can we add, like what tenants are looking for, what's missing, where can we add something, and then obviously you plug those numbers into a spreadsheet to make sure the returns actually make sense. And so that's been really my focus. The reality is, to your point, you can't really, especially when you're getting started, you can't really just do one thing,
Mhm.
because you have to get a big deal done, which I'm focused on 100 plus units. So to get those kind of deals done, you have to have, your KP who's got the balance sheet and all of that stuff for the loan. You obviously got to have experience on the team because, I mean, why would anybody invest with you otherwise? So like, in bringing those kind of people on board, I have to add value to them. And so, yeah, I mean, my focus has been the acquisitions, all the stuff I mentioned, but also I've been focused on building capital relationships, retail level, with friends and family as well as high net worth, but then also talking to people who represent larger check writers,
Mm.
and obviously leaning on my KP and his experience and that kind of stuff. But I've been trying to focus on those two aspects because basically the kind of agreement we have is like he'll do the KP piece and he'll do the asset management because that's his expertise. He's got 20 years experience. He's got 15 plus full cycles somewhere around there.
Oh, wow.
So so when that's kind of the hardest part of the whole thing. Like, rely on him for that, and then in return, I'm trying to add value to him by kind of simplifying the acquisition pipeline and the equity pipeline. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of how I've started and what I'm doing, and kind of how I want to go forward, honestly. And so it's just building those relationships and making those things come together.
Awesome. No, that's cool. Okay. Uh,
Yeah.
and is there anything that, as you've been in the space for a few years, and
Mhm.
if an LP goes to a conference, or maybe they go to two conferences, or like, they start seeing, they're like, hey, I've seen, I went to the conference, I saw that guy, and I went to another
Mhm.
conference, I saw the same, kind of the same few people and all that. So it
Yeah.
doesn't take long for an LP to really, to get on a bunch of different lists, and you have different options. And so,
Yeah.
what is there anything that you guys do that you can think of that you think kind of sets yourself apart, from some of the other groups out there?
So I think the thing that really sets us apart, and I think that as an LP that you should look for, is the experience, track record, and the asset management capabilities of that sponsorship team. So again, I'll repeat, like, that's not me yet. I mean, I want to be there
Mhm.
one day. I'm certainly learning as I go here on that side of things. But again, my KP, who also functions as asset manager on these deals, that's his expertise, right? And so you want to make sure that you have somebody who knows how to run. When you're talking about a 100 unit or 200 unit apartment complex, you're talking about a pretty big business. And
Yeah.
you want to make sure
Yeah.
you have somebody who knows how to run that kind of business. And so I would say that's the number one thing. I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, we are seeing this year, right? That a lot of LPs are, finding out they're getting capital calls. They're finding out they're, going to lose their investment or a portion of it. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of that boils down to, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. There's not one, but
Sure.
some of it can boil down to, for sure, to, like, just having inexperience in the GP team in terms of running the, executing the business plan. So,
Yep.
for the LP, it's about, again, vet the sponsor, make sure that they actually have experience in the space with that type of asset, that type of business plan. They've actually executed it and exited successfully. And then beyond that, it really comes down to that point to, like, which markets do you like better, or which property type or business plan do you like better at that point.
Yep. 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 Good. All very good points. And then I guess, sounds like you talked to a bunch of different LPs, and I
Mhm.
remember an LP asked me, or I've had multiple LPs ask me the same question, and they're like, Dustin, what should I, because, and I could tell, sometimes they're a little experienced, but a lot of times
Mhm.
I feel like the questions, probably a little more from the maybe the inexperienced LP, and they're like, "Hey, what should I be asking you about this deal?" So I'm gonna
Mhm.
ask you the same thing. What should LPs kind of be asking you, when they're looking at one of your deals, and just
Mhm.
kind of how should they be looking at this?
Sure, yeah. So I'll repeat myself. They should look at the sponsorship team's track
Yeah,
record.
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah,
that's absolutely number one.
yeah.
But I would say beyond that, so I've made that point. So, but beyond that, I think when it comes to looking at returns, a lot of it's very easy when somebody gives you this formula of, like, here's your IRR, here's your equity multiple, here's your cash on cash. It's easy to just be like, well, which one's higher, and go with
Sure.
that. But that's not always the best way to look at it. So again, it kind of goes back to my business plan. What I was talking about, what we're doing is, you can get a 20% IRR, but what's the risk associated with that business plan? It's going to be a lot higher risk.
Yep.
On the flip side, you can get a 14 IRR. It doesn't look as sexy, but also maybe they're just adding the dog wash station. That's it. You know what I mean? So, like,
Yep.
you have to kind of
Yep.
figure out where your risk tolerance lies in relation to what those returns are, and that's obviously individual for everybody. So I would say when you're looking at it, you want to look at those metrics, but you also want to evaluate what the actual plan is, to make sure that it's all matching up, because I don't want this to sound pejorative, but anybody can put a return on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
being able to actually, like, combine that with the real world business plan, and then how that actually gets executed, and how that works out. I would say beyond that too is looking at how that, so in particular with your IRR, if you want to get technical, like, I'm very much a proponent of looking at what's called, technically it's called an IRR partition, but basically it's like how much of that is coming back from a sale versus the yield, the cash on cash.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of deals. You may have two deals actually that show 17, but if one of them is banking on 80% of that money coming from a sale versus the other one's banking on only 50% of it coming from a sale.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, that comes back to risk. And it's like, if you're putting so much on the sell, then if you miss on the sell, you're missing on your returns.
Yep.
And so again,
Yep.
there's not a right or wrong. It depends on the individual investor, but you just be aware of that. And so that's one of those things that I personally like to look at and think about, when I've LP'd into different deals. And so I would recommend that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I just to put a little comment on that, I'd say, with higher interest rates and things like that, obviously that's really put
Mhm.
a lot of downward pressure on your cash on cash,
Yeah.
portion. And so we, at least when I first started out, I remember we used to see, probably it was probably more of a 50 mix, because I would look at
Hmm.
that. I'd kind of look
Hmm.
at, what do I get from cash flow and what do I get from the back end? Because to your point, it's a risk thing. Like, and so if you're
Yeah.
completely banking on that back end, like, what if you do miss there? So, or if you miss
Right.
some, and that's 80%. So, yeah, but I'd say, especially with interest rates, kind of hiking up and all that, I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember where a lot of it's coming in at, but I bet it's at least 60-40 right now on most deals, if not
Hmm.
probably 70-30, or maybe even more than
Yeah,
that. So,
I would agree with you. I've seen more of, yeah, it's closer to that 60-40 70-30. And I
mhm,
think too that relates, as far as what to look for the LP. I mean, I think it relates to your point with higher interest rates. If you want that cash on cash to be a bigger part of it, then that you have to back that up to what's the cost basis of this thing. Like, are they going in at a good basis to be able to generate the returns they want? And then of course that's up to the GP to figure out,
yep,
that basis versus what the seller wants, because like that's the spread, that's the problem with trying to get one of these deals right now. but
yep,
but
yep,
you want to make sure obviously that you're buying at a good basis so that you can get that cash flow, and honestly just so you can kind of, in my opinion, so you can hedge that if things, I tend to think that things will improve from here. Like I think 24 and 25 are probably going to be the bottom
mhm,
of this, and we'll be thankful to have been buying now in 5 years. But
yep,
just in
yep,
case that's wrong, you want to make sure that you are buying at a good basis, so you're not going to be stuck, upside down in the worst case, or break even in a best case scenario.
yep, 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 yep. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's I don't know. We kind of talked about it earlier, but or I was, I always think of it as, kind of like a pendulum. And
Hmm.
so, 21 and early 22, we were on one end, and now we're on
Yep.
the other end. And where, because someone was asking me, like, well, what should the exit cap rate be? I'm like, I'm like, well,
Right.
if you're a family office and all that, a lot of those guys are talking, exit cap of, at least for DFW and stuff, they're, looking at potentially a 6. And so,
Hmm.
but it's going to be hard to, unless you just have a really, really hairy deal. It's going to be hard to, make some of that stuff work. So anyways, but
Yeah,
I can
for
definitely
sure.
dive down into the rabbit hole there. Um,
Me too.
so what do you like most about multifamily? And then if there's something that, if you want to comment on something maybe you're not so fond of. I know for
Mhm.
us, we just kind of finished up K1s for the most part. And so that's, I like it because it helps me on taxes, but then all the preparation for it, not
Sure.
my favorite. So
Yeah,
but
yeah.
anyways, yeah, love to get your take there.
Yeah, so the thing that I like most, and this is just kind of a very general answer, honestly, but it is the ability to control the value of the asset. I mean, that's what attracted
Yeah.
me to commercial real estate in general, and then I kind of dove into multifamily. But
Yeah.
being able to control it via the NOI, and obviously the cap rate comes into play in that formula, so you're not completely independent of the market. But the way I like to think about it is, the cap rate may chalk the field, but whether you're on your own 20 or the opposing 20 is all up to you, right? You get your NOI where it needs to be. So, that's what I like about it, is having that level of control. What I dislike, and I won't even go as particular as you are on K1s and stuff like that, but I think it is related. Is that, and it's not even a multifamily thing. It's just kind of, I feel like it's just real estate, but like it's such an orchestra of people, which I like that part of it. But then it creates, when you're trying to get everybody moving in one direction, it is so hard to get all the timelines synced up, get everybody moving in the same direction, approaching things the same way. So uh, I say I dislike it. I mean, it's part of life, it's part of it, but it's I wish there is, again, an engineering background, in particular software engineering. So like that proclivity of like when I write this code, it just does it every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish that could be executed into real life, you know. But when you're dealing with like I said, you've got, you know, yourself, your co-GPs, your asset manager, your property manager. You've got, you know, macroeconomic stuff you can't control, political stuff you can't control, like just trying to get everything kind of formed together in the direction you want to execute your business plan. You know, it can be a headache sometimes. Just put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely a lot going on for sure. So, uh,
Yeah.
kind of, I'm not, I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm kind of curious. Did kind of your start? Did you get into a mentoring program? Like, did you just kind of partner up with the KP you're partnering up with now? Like,
Mhm.
what did that beginning of your journey kind of look like for you?
Sure. So I can back up a little bit. So I'd started in single family and built up a
Mm,
fairly small portfolio, 10 or so units in single family. And obviously that's generally kind of, most people just do that on their own. And I did too. You know, thankfully had a decent amount of cash at the time. And so, you know, went the single family route. And that very quickly kind of, like everybody I think who does that, you figure out like this doesn't scale very well for a lot of different reasons. And so when I started multifamily, that was January of 21, which was, you know, a heck of a year to start.
yeah.
I did not join. So I am a part of a mentorship program now, and I consider it more of a mastermind. But I didn't start that way. So
Mm,
I joined that last year, about a year ago, actually. So the first 2 years, 21 and 22, I was very much just kind of doing my thing and learning. Like I used all the, you know, free-ish resources, right? Different books. You know, I always say my real estate hero is Ken McElroy. I got a lot out of some of his books, his early ones, the ABC series and all that stuff. So you know, I learned kind of the basics from there. Then I read some other stuff, and you know, YouTube University and all that stuff, right? And put it all together and went to conferences like you're saying, met some people, met a lot of people, not some, met a lot of people, and kind of kept building those relationships because I realized kind of early on that like the one weakness I had was I had no network, so I had to build that. And then I had to build that, and then I also kind of that kind of dovetailed with that. That was my weakness. I had to sure that up and get that going. On the plus side, I think you probably know this as well. Like, you know, being an A student doesn't help you at all in entrepreneurship. But the one thing and that was me in school, but the
yeah.
one thing being an A student helps you with is being able to assimilate a whole bunch of information and
Mhm,
understand it and get through it quickly. And so that's basically what I did, honestly. Kind of, like I said, I just kind of studied myself to death until I kind of understood things. And then from there, it really was like, in building that network, I kept meeting different people who are doing different stuff. The KP I'm working with now, I met him through a local RIA thing,
mm,
and built that relationship up, you know, like very slowly, like just every so often. I actually had a reminder on my phone where I'd text him every 2 weeks or call him, either one, and just kind of slowly build that relationship. But it's, you know, I did that with a lot of people, and so like it was kind of very organic in that sense. And actually was already, you know, got on my first deal as a co-GP before I ever joined that mastermind. But you know, last year I did start to recognize, okay, again, I want to scale, I want to move this, you know, upward, and onward, and grow. And so it's like, well, if you want to do that, you got to be around, you know, the next level players, right? So like
mm,
I started to look around for different masterminds or mentorship groups, or whatever you want to call them, and you know, I chose one, and yeah, it's been great. So I mean, yes, I am a part of one, but I didn't start there. But I just think there's, you know, if you can do it on your own, I think that's really a plus because you can save a lot of money because some of these mentorship programs are very expensive.
mhm,
But you know, just that's an individual call, right? I mean, it just depends on. I never felt like my weakness was being able to figure out some of the technical details around acquisitions and stuff. Like that was, I felt like I was able to get that figured out fairly easily and quickly on my own. It was more of the kind of the network and kind of the next level business thinking where that motivated me to want to
mhm.
you know, join a mastermind.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know for me, because whenever I was kind of getting going in
Mhm.
2012, there were no resources. It was
Yeah.
it was Lifestyles Unlimited, and or that's the only one. I guess I don't even know if Kim McElroy was, maybe he's getting started. I don't know what he was doing. I don't remember when he got going, but anyways, I didn't. There were no resources. You couldn't find anything on
Mhm.
YouTube, and so you had to go to their thing. And I would go to local kind of meetups, but like no one had multifamily. They'd have like a fourplex, type thing.
Sure. Yeah.
But I remember I went there and I, started meeting people. Actually, I did meet a guy at a local thing. He had a 20 unit in or 24 unit, I can't remember. And he lived in Dallas and he lived in the properties in Oklahoma. And I was, for me, I was, mind blown because I was, I had a few rentals and I thought that was
Hmm.
kind of, I thought I was doing pretty well. And I met this guy and he had 20 units. I was just like, whew, and then it's funny. And then I went to Lifestyles. I met somebody with 50 units and then 100 units. I was
Sure.
just like, oh my, like, wow, these guys are.
Yeah.
And I remember I kind of similar to you, if maybe you're a KP, there's a guy that I was introduced to that he had a big company.
Mm.
He had 8,000 doors, and so
Wow.
I would kind of not every probably few months like hey just want to say hi just trying to keep in touch with the guy basically so and then we almost ended up buying a deal from him last year so it was cool it's very
Nice.
very full circle
Well,
from that
I think you're kind of hitting on what I think is the value of all those, conferences and stuff like that is being around people who have, are doing what you want to do, but also doing it at a larger scale because it kind of like unlocks your mind, right? Like
Mhm.
there was a point at which, I mean, kind of like what you were saying, if somebody had told me 40 units, I was like 40 units, and now it's like I'm in best and final on a 200 unit right now. So
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
it's like, but that you only get that, you can only get there by being around people who have done it because it does help you kind of, again, have that, I guess the abundance mindset people talk about is like being able to get above and beyond your limiting belief of like, well, I can only do 40. I mean, yeah, on my own, I can only do 40, but with a good co-GP team and some LPs and whatever, like, we're doing this 200, hopefully, if we can get
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah.
that's a super important part of networking and the conferences and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yep, absolutely. Switching gears a little bit, do you have
Sure.
any favorite books, podcasts? I don't know if I'm an audiobook guy more of so or an
Gotcha.
audiobook. And then if there's one that you've read more or listened to more than once, then definitely interested in that.
Gotcha. As far as books, it's gonna be maybe a funny one because we're talking about GP stuff here, but it's Brian Burke's Hands Off Investor, which he
Oh.
wrote for LPs, but that one was kind of one of the first ones that really kind of just dialed in for me, like all the different details, right? Because again, it's written from the perspective of being an LP, but as a GP, you get to learn kind of not only that, like their mindset, how they should be looking at this, and therefore what you should be presenting, but also just there was some technical jargon in that book that I hadn't heard before. So,
Hmm.
so it's very useful from that standpoint. And so yeah, that's definitely one that I really it just stands out that I really loved. I think these are probably gonna be ones that everybody that has heard of, but like Rob Beardsley's books on underwriting and capital structure, those were great. And then as far as asset management, Gary Lipsky and Kyle Mitchell wrote one called Best in Class,
Mhm.
and it's another one that stands out to me as far as just like I have since learned I don't necessarily want to be the asset manager, but if I'm going to
Mhm.
underwrite a deal and put together this idea of what our business plan is, I need to understand how that asset management should work and all that. So like
Yeah.
that kind of ties in together for me, and so those I would say those books probably are the ones that stand out in my head as far as just really, really helpful and useful. As far as podcasts, I've listened to a whole bunch. It's, I kind of cycle through. Right now, I'm actually in like this period of like I just don't listen to podcasts right now for some
Mhm.
reason. I don't know. I kind of got bored,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
there's been a lot. I don't know that I would want to single out. I mean, Gary Lipsky's. I mean, his podcast is great. So I mean, I would absolutely say that that's worth listening to. I think it's called the Real Estate investor show, something
Okay.
like that.
Cool.
In real estate investor podcast, maybe. Sorry, Gary, if you see this, I'm butchering that. Just look him up, you'll find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do like his a lot. He has great guests. A lot of the podcasts I listen to actually are not necessarily real estate. Recently, haven't been real estate related. They've been more like kind of macroeconomic related because I think,
Mm.
like I said, for better or worse, a lot of that ties into real estate now.
Yep.
A lot of politics ties into it. It's not a matter of being red or blue or any of that. It's just like you have to know what these people are doing because it's directly affecting landlords. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've been listening to a lot more of those kind of things, but I can't really call out one in particular. I mean, I love the PBD podcast if you like those, but that's not really real estate. It's kind of a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that stand out.
Cool. So where switching gears again, where do you see
Mhm.
yourself in the next few years, or maybe
Sure.
this, how you think 2024 might shape up for you, however you want to kind of answer that.
Yeah, so for 24, I've been saying this for a while now, like even last year, that I felt like 24 would be the year to buy, and I
Hmm.
absolutely believe that now. And I think that'll probably extend into next year as well. So I'm 34 now. So when I was, 18 is when the GFC happened, the
Hmm.
Great Financial Crisis of 2008. And so, there's a lot of people that made a lot of money in real estate and everything else by buying during that 3-year trough that happened there.
Yep.
I think this year and next year are basically like our version of, I'll call it my version of that, because at 18 I was just trying, again, I was in college, I was just trying to get a good grade, I didn't know what was going on. But now as an adult I can, obviously recognize it. So I think this is the trough here to buy, and to get to the next part of your question, in 5 years, if I've done my job now, hopefully we'll be exiting those deals for very good profits for our LPs, and then obviously hopefully good promotes for me as well.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of how I'm seeing this year, next year, and 5 years from now. But it really is about trying to just kind of expand and grow, and that's why I've been very aggressive. Not aggressive in terms of pricing, but aggressive in terms of I'm putting out offers like literally every week.
Hmm.
Even ones where it's like I'm not even close. I throw it out there anyway because you never know what might happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's like I've definitely ramped that up this year. I mean, I think last year I just kind of, I won't say I sat on my hands, but I kind of pulled back a little bit because it was just so, last year was wild. I mean, like
Hmm.
rates were all over the place and it's just nobody knew what was going on. But this year I've definitely turned it up, and I'm submitting offers, like I said, every single week. And
Awesome.
so hopefully in 5 years we're exiting those deals.
There you go. Okay, cool. Um, any advice for someone that wants to be a GP? Just anything that you think has kind of helped out with your journey.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound very generic, I guess, but I would just say dive in, just do
Yeah.
it. I guess to borrow Nike's phrase, but I mean, it really is important. And I think to be a little bit more specific. So when I say just do it, just dive in, like go talk to brokers, go tour properties. Like just get involved that way. Go to the local events, meet, grow your network. Not necessarily trying to meet LPs, like meet people who are GPs who are doing what you want to do, the asset class, the business plan, whatever. Just get in there and meet those people, and then once you do that, obviously you want to approach it from the standpoint of how can I bring value to this person, right? It's not the sad reality, or maybe it's not sad, but the reality is when you're starting, you have to have some help. I mean, you have to have a KP who can get the loan. You have to have asset managers who can help you. Like all that stuff, you have to ask for those things. So, that's a given, but how can you maybe add value back to them, and bring, some sort of plus for them to help you?
Yep.
It can't just be a take kind of take scenario. So, I would say that, figure out a way to add value to people, go out and meet folks, get out and do it, submit offers, even if you don't know exactly what you're doing. I mean, like you want to double check it, get somebody to double check your underwriting or whatever, but like, get involved in the game, because I think that's really where the learning happens, is when you're actually doing stuff. You can only learn so much from YouTube University or whatever, but once you
Yep.
get into the actual game
Yep.
and meet people, it really kind of speeds up your actual understanding of stuff.
Yeah, no, so that's great. So I mean, as you mentioned, these are big deals, and you need a team around you, so you got to be working,
Yep,
with really good folks, high quality folks, and then, one
absolutely.
thing that I like what you said was, you spent a ton of time, like, educating yourself, going all
Hmm.
in, but then,
Hmm.
you can only do that for so long before you
Right.
really got to start applying it, or it doesn't really mean anything if it's all up here. So,
Exactly.
so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, cool. How do people get a hold of you if you want to give, website, email, whatever you want to kind of
Sure.
give out, so they can reach out?
Sure. Yeah. So you can reach me. Well, my website is swiftcitycapital.com. Swiftcitycapital.com. You can find me on social media. I mean, just look up Drew Pitchford on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or X, I guess. And I should be there. And then, yeah, you can send me an email, drew@swiftcitycapital.com. And yeah, I mean that should get you, that should get you in my sphere somewhere, and then we can connect from there.
Okay, awesome. Curious, where is Swift City? Is that the nickname for Nashville or what?
No, so that's a good question. So that's
Okay.
actually it's an interesting name that kind of combines my past and my future is how I look at it. So Swift is, I mentioned I'm a software engineer. That's what I was
Mhm.
trained in, and particularly it was Apple development, so developing apps for iPhone and Mac and stuff like that. And
Okay.
their Apple's programming language is called Swift. And
Oh,
so
okay.
and then when I started getting into real estate, it just kind of, when I needed a company name, it just came together to me. I was like, Swift is my past, is Apple
Yeah.
development, and City is the future, is real estate. And so just combine
Yeah.
it together. And that's kind of how that came to be.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked because I was like, Swift City, what's that?
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
cool.
it's got a lot of personal meaning, I guess, you know.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Well, cool. Yeah. Really appreciate your time, Drew. Yeah. Please reach out to Drew. Super nice guy, especially, if you're in that, Tennessee, Nashville area, definitely, great, knowledgeable person, very active and all that. So please reach out to him. And yeah, appreciate your time, Drew. Hope you have a great weekend and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
All
See
right,
you.
thank you.
Bye.